Harry's Wife, part 100.21. Does Harry see the lies? Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. We've known for a long time that Harry's wife spouts untruths. Open her mouth and out of a cake hole comes a porky pie. It's been documented on many times, and this is accelerated as of late as a consequence of people pointing out very quickly that what she says does not bear any resemblance to what actually occurred. And as I've mentioned in parts passim, there is a turning of the tide. Once upon a time, there were only a certain group that would call her out in such behaviours. Piers Morgan, for instance, driven by his own narcissism. Tom Bauer, as a consequence of his reaction to the lies that were told in the Oprah Winfrey interview that caused him to go away and undertake rigorous and thorough research. There are other people besides, other journalists, but largely they were relatively isolated voices. And there were just as many that would be supportive of her, fighting back, those within certain sections of the media supportive of her position, calling out supposed hatred, etc. Other people perhaps were a little bit more circumspect. They didn't necessarily call them lies, and even the Queen, with the brilliantly worded response of "recollections may vary," allowed everybody to know what was really being thought of there. However, more recently, more and more people are feeling emboldened, feeling supported, to state that she tells these lies. People who were hitherto supporters, more on that in another video, are seeing, actually, I can't support this person any longer, and are engaging in a 180. And it starts to have something of a domino effect. It's a little bit like when an army is being beaten in a battle. First, they're holding the line, they're fighting, the relevant officers are keeping them in line, but one or two, morale starts to break. They are concerned that they're going to lose, and they turn tail and run. And if that is not curtailed promptly, then the problem is that some more soldiers see them running, and then others do, and all of a sudden you have a wholesale retreat, and the army becomes routed. This is what is now starting to happen with Harry's wife. And there are two reasons behind this. The first is, as ever, it's generated by her own behaviour. She's telling such monumental whoppers that people think, well, this is pretty cut and dried, isn't it? We can see that this is just utter horseshit. And therefore, if I call it out as a lie, other than the most deluded of shuggers, nobody's going to pile on and attack me. So I feel safe calling out this obvious lie. And then, of course, there is the herd mentality. That as more and more people start to see the sense of this and feel emboldened and safer to say so, others follow suit. Previously, there would be a reluctance for fear of being labelled a bigot, a racist, a misogynist. The supporters of Harry's wife, not necessarily as large in number as people might think, were certainly vocal, often the way with many of these wokists that shout down people, whilst maintaining that people should be allowed freedom of speech, which in their terms is quite simply, I'm allowed to say it, you're not, if you disagree with me. And so hitherto, people were guarded. For instance, Piers Morgan was the only one that spoke out and said he didn't believe what she was saying about feeling suicidal. Other people were like, ooh, no, you can't say that. We're not allowed to question people who feel suicidal. You have to accept what they're saying. That's not very nice to do so. But there are instances where it's patently obvious that a lie is being told, and Piers Morgan, as I've explained for his own agenda as a narcissist himself, utilised the truth to that end. Now, more and more people feel safer because of the whoppers that she keeps telling, and, driven by their own behaviour, and more people calling it out, the tide is now turning. The problem that she has is that her brand of narcissism means that she's likely to carry on coming out with these utter whoppers, these utter howlers, and thus she will accelerate the downward spiral. More and more people will start to think, yep, knew it all along, this just validates what I've always stated, or others will go, actually, now I'm starting to see it, and they'll feel a sense of dismay. I can't believe that I've supported this person after them behaving in this way. It's all starting to make sense. Oh dear. There will, of course, remain a rump of idiots that no matter what she says, they'll swallow it whole, but then, of course, they only have one brain cell between their collective unit, and one can't expect any other response from them. Thus, she continues to tell these lies, which has caused many people to ask the question, but what about old Ginger Bollocks? Does he see the lies? And if so, what's his response? Well, first of all, he won't see some of the lies. Why? He is not the brightest man, and therefore won't necessarily pick up on certain contradictions in evidence. He just simply won't see it. It passes him by. In other instances, of course, her behaviour fits with his own narrative. Remember, although he's got empathic traits, he also has narcissistic traits. And principally with Harry, there are two major problems. His obvious envy of his older brother, which was generally kept under control and harnessed until along came a spider, and of course that simmering resentment all of these years about the treatment of his mother. Often a solitary voice in the wilderness, there was not a lot he could do about that, and he just got on with things, embracing the family, harbouring the resentment, but not really having anywhere to vent it. But it stayed there, and Harry's wife, of course, as part of her instinctive manipulation of him, has utilised those as a strength to ensnare him, and thus he has found a comrade in arms. And as a consequence, some of the things that she says fits with his narrative, and therefore he will fail to see that there is a lie. Furthermore, he fails to see some of the lies because quite simply the plausibility of her narrative, the way that she puts it forward, the way that she would explain it away. So with some of the lies that have manifested, Harry just doesn't see them. Hard to understand perhaps for some of you, not because you're stupid, but quite simply it beggars belief from your point of view that he can't see that she's telling lies. But when you put it against the context of his intelligence, his own narrative, based upon what I've just told you, and the plausibility of her own, because it will have plausibility from time to time, the consequence of that is he does not see the lies. However, some of it will not stack up for him. Notwithstanding what I've just said, some of the whoppers will cause him to think, hang on a moment. But this presents him with a problem. He will be seeing that she's telling lies, or at least being economical with the truth, or perhaps misremembering or getting it wrong, and he does see it. So what's his reaction? Well, the first problem that he has is that if he points it out to her, he of course is then issuing challenge fuel to her. And as the intimate partner primary source to a narcissist, her narcissism immediately needs to get him back in line. And thus it will unleash a manipulation against him. For instance, she might unleash a pity play, whereby she says, I can't believe that you're taking their side, Harry. I thought we were in this together. Boo-hoo, boo-hoo. Turns on the waterworks. His emotional empathy, driven by his emotional thinking, causes him to feel sorry for her, and he no longer questions her, apologising, saying, I'm sorry, I guess I just didn't understand. Now, though, where is my green crayon? In other instances, there'll be a threat. You better believe me, Harry, otherwise, you know what? Bzz, bzz. And out comes the electric cattle prods to be applied to the pink pods of the prince. In other instances, there's a reward. Now, Harry, don't be so silly listening to those stupid people. Come over here and let me tickle your belly. And of course, he's given a dose of spicy poontang by way of benign manipulation to ensure that his easily distracted mind focuses on something else as he's tromboned and felched, rather than continuing to ask her, why have you been telling whoppers? Alternatively, she may well just be dismissive in that haughty, arrogant fashion of hers. Oh, that's just nonsense, she explains. Don't listen to them, they don't know what they're talking about. You know that they're all idiots and haters. And he thinks, oh, okay, well, if Harry's wife says that's the case, I guess it must be right. And he just accepts it and goes back to playing with his building blocks. In other instances, she would deflect from it, saying, let's not get into all of that right now. I'm feeling tired, or didn't you want to watch a new episode of The Crown? Come on, I've just got some lovely, organic, authentic popcorn for us to share. Oh, super duper! And like a excited Labrador, he bounds over, jumps up on the settee and settles down to watch an episode of The Crown. In other instances, he would face her ignited fury, where she lashes out at him, accusing him of being disloyal, telling him that he's an awful, treacherous individual, and telling him that if he doesn't get in line, he'll regret it. So the problem that he has is that where he does spot that she's telling a porky pie, and he tries to point this out to her, a range of manipulations will be brought to bear against him, which will invariably cause him to retract what he's suggesting. The other problem that exists is he doesn't actually want to run the risk of upsetting her more widely. Why? He's had previous experience of what happens when that goes on, because he's in the sustained devaluation, and it ain't great, so he doesn't want to experience it again. He has children with this woman, who he loves. He loves his children, and he doesn't want to lose them. She will, of course, triangulate them with him, and, notwithstanding his relative dim-wittedness, he'll be alive to the fact of the risk of her trying to prevent him having anything to do with his own children. Thirdly, he's isolated. Of course, outmaneuvered by the narcissist, he has burned his bridges with his family, doesn't have any contact with her family, and he's in the United States with a false set of friends placed around him. He's ring-fenced, isolated, and alienated from those that might offer him some support. And therefore, an attempt to try and get her to accept that she's lying is just going to fall on deaf ears, for reasons which are obvious. It offends her sense of control, and the risks to him are too great to continue to push it too hard. Finally, another instance is this, that quite simply, he does not want to accept that she's not what he thought she was. He evidently loves her, and he believes that she loves him, unaware that a narcissist can't love. He thought that at long last he'd found his soulmate. He thought that there was somebody on his side, somebody who understood him, somebody who got the fact that he was the spare, and that he'd always been relegated to the second row. The envy of William and the resentment of other members of the family found a home in her. She understood. She listened. She soothed his fevered brow when he occasionally had a ginger rage attack about it. More largely, he felt that he got an ally in this woman, someone who felt like an outsider like he has done, someone who perhaps has not been given the support that he deserved. She will regale him, no doubt, with repeated pity plays in relation to her own fractious family dynamics. And therefore, he saw in her that soulmate. She mirrored back at him what he wanted. And in the circumstances, he struggles, overwhelmed by his emotional thinking, to accept that she isn't the thing that he thought she was, and he doesn't want to admit that. It's too painful. Regularly. I've seen that in my own victims, and of course the people that I advise, that it's too much for them to accept that this person isn't what they thought they were, the panacea to all their ills, that wonderful shining example of love that had been sent from the heavens above. They don't want it to crash and burn. They essentially remain in a position of denial. And I've seen many people in a similar position. So with Prince Harry, some of the lies he just does not see. Others he does, but he's either too afraid to say anything about it based upon the reactions and the risks that face. Where he does say something, he's manipulated into silence, and he still has to wrestle with the fact that he can't accept that she's not the person that he thought that she was. He's not ready to understand and embrace that just yet. And that's the position with regard to Harry and seeing the whoppers that she engages in. This is very common for many victims of the narcissist and should give you some understanding with regard to your own position or that of other people where you're scratching your head as to why they can't see or accept the behaviours of the narcissist. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.